Nate, you and I are going to have a little discussion, a little heated
heart to heart.
heated debate. It's not a debate, we're both on the same side about the console wars. And this does include PC in a way, which we'll get to, because no one cares what platform you play something on. Nobody cares. You're the only one who cares, no matter what it is.
You think everyone cares, but they don't.
They do not at all. They don't care at all. They just hear screeching and they move on. So we're going to talk a little bit about this, about the whole point of the console wars, why it's stupid, actually a little bit where it started, because this has been going on forever. This has happened since long before PlayStation or even Xbox existed, actually. It's been happening back with Atari. It was happening back with Nintendo. It was happening back with Sega. A lot of people are not going to remember that because those consoles are from before they were born.
Right.
But it's true. It's the screeching of what do I play games on is something that's been happening since games existed.
Yeah, I think it just comes back to the human race just finds stuff to be angry about.
Yeah.
And they want to identify with something. So then anyone who doesn't agree with them, they're like, you're terrible.
Well, it's tribalism.
And it's stupid.
That's what it is. It's tribalism.
Yep.
And so we're looking at the last couple generations of the console wars for this, because here's why the console wars don't matter. Each console does something better. And those things are not subjective things. They are actually objective, measurable things. For example, the PlayStation 4 had more exclusive games than the Xbox One did. That is a measurable thing you can count out. It had more exclusive games that people cared about, that were AAA games that people wanted to buy.
Like Gran Turismo.
I like Gran Turismo, but nobody else seems to care anymore. That was, actually, little aside, Gran Turismo 3 was my first game I ever owned. Ever.
Wow. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, it came with my PlayStation 2. I still own that original disc, and it's cracked in the middle of it. It's just destroyed.
Wow.
Because I was a dumb kid.
You've become the very thing you've sworn to destroy.
That's very true. So here's the thing, too. I mean, they had God of War. They had Insomniac Spider-Man. They had Ratchet and Clank. They had Bloodborne. These are a lot of games that people really care about. The thing with Xbox is that it had some exclusive games, the Master Chief Collection.
Gunfight,
Gears of War, Gunfight again.
Yeah.
Don't forget Gunfight.
Gunfight for a fourth time.
So the thing with that, though, is, I mean, they even had Quantum Break, but a lot of the games that Xbox had for exclusives ended up coming to PC as well. And while a few are for PlayStation, like Horizon Zero Dawn, the majority of that exclusive library has stayed on the PlayStation. So that's something that PlayStation has that is measurable, that is a better quality.
Yeah.
There's nothing to add to that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you argue that? I guess
that just sounds like it.
There are also the different forms of hardware between these as well, because technically, in a lot of ways, the Xbox One X is more powerful than the PlayStation 4 Pro. It's able to do a lot of things natively in 4K that the PlayStation can't always do natively in 4K. And there are a lot of different games that run better on the Xbox One X that run on both platforms. For example, Jedi Fallen Order did have less problems on the Xbox One X than it had on the PlayStation 4. Now, if we're looking at the PC release, that's obviously going to be the most smooth release of this game, if you actually know how to work out the kinks in the game. But at the same time, I do think it's worth noting that Xbox, at least with its second iteration of the hardware, with the One X, not the S, was able to be much more powerful than the PlayStation. At the same time, it did lack a lot of that exclusive game library. And I think that both of those things need to be taken into account, and they're not really just subjective opinions. They're real things that you can count out. What are the tech specs of this machine? How many games are on this machine? That's not something that you can just screech about because you like one more than the other. And backwards compatibility was a focus on Xbox for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it comes down to people, they like their system, right?
Yep.
So getting into brand loyalty.
Yeah.
People are loyal to a brand. So for example, I like PlayStation just as a brand better than Xbox.
Okay.
But there are people that go around and they say everything that has to do with PlayStation is better.
Right.
Or everything that has to do with Xbox is better. But the thing is, it's not.
Right.
And I think that mindset is kind of stupid, because if you like something just for the sake of liking it, well then you're kind of close-minded
Well, it's
to
like the
other
people-
opportunities. And
I mean, it's like the people who buy an iPhone every year. Even if the iPhone came out and it was a cardboard box,
Yeah.
there'd be people who would buy it.
exactly.
Or people who buy Supreme because it says Supreme on the shirt.
Right.
Why?
Or like back in the day when everyone bought like Hollister shirts.
Yeah, that's true.
I was one of those guilty people that did that.
Yeah,
but-
because you thought they were cool.
Yeah,
I remember
it's
that
like,
in high
yeah.
school. Yeah, Nate used to think that if you didn't wear Hollister, you were wearing kind of cheap knockoff
yeah,
clothing that wasn't name
I wanted to
brand.
be cool.
And people were that way with American Eagle as well.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with enjoying those things or liking the quality of them, but if you just buy them because of the name on it, it's very silly. Because wouldn't you say, too, that this is something you and I have talked about with PlayStation that is measurable, is that they didn't really care about backwards compatibility at all.
Right.
And that kind of sucked.
Yeah, it was kind of a poor choice.
Yeah. Like, how many PlayStation 2 games would we have even rebought digital copies of to play on here if they had actually focused on it?
Right.
You know, there's very few PS2 on PS4 games. They pretty much dropped the program and quit making them.
Battlefront.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, yeah, and meanwhile, it's very easily accessible on Xbox One. You buy it for $10. The original
Right.
Battlefront and Battlefront 2 is like $10 most of the time. And you get it and you have access to it, and it's looks much better than it did originally.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that that's something that's not subjective. You can't just say like, well, no, PlayStation did care more about backwards compatibility.
It's like, no, it didn't.
Because they didn't. Because they didn't bring these games up. You have PS Now where you can stream some of the games.
Right.
Not all of them.
But it's like $100.
Well, yeah,
to
you have,
subscribe to that.
yeah, for a year you have to pay. I don't remember what the actual breakdown is, but I think it is like $10-ish a month.
Yeah.
So you are paying over the course of a year just to stream those games that you could just pop into a PS3 or a PS2 and not pay anything
Right.
to play that you already own.
Right.
It's a bad system is what we're getting at. There's no arguing about that one. I also think that it's about where games are.
Yeah. It's... And also kind of where your friends are.
Yeah.
So if... Like, for example, me and you both play the PlayStation.
Right.
But we like playing together.
Yep.
So, kind of like what you said earlier, if all of a sudden you and T and some of your other friends, and then my friends too, just bought the Xbox Series X, and I bought the PS5, that would be kind of boring for me, because you guys are all playing games, and I'm just on my own.
Right. I mean, there'd be
So-
things like Assassin's Creed that I'm sure you'd still have,
Yeah.
you know, a really fun time on, but
We can't play COD, we can't play Monster Hunter.
Or
we
Grand
can't-
Theft
you know,
Auto.
Grand Theft Auto.
yeah, they're all just out the
So-
door. All these social components. And people who play just single-player only games, that's not an issue I guess you have to worry about. But
Right.
gaming has become very social over the years, and it's something that people want to do together, to spend time together, and talk together, even essentially on the phone, like over a headset, while playing their games. And if you're not able to find your friends or play with your friends, it hits a point where it's a very lonely experience, if that's one of the things you enjoy about games.
Yeah, it kind of just depends on what you want to play in games.
Right, because if you are playing these multiplayer games, I don't think anybody really sits down and thinks they're as fun on their own.
Right.
Is anyone sitting down thinking like, I like playing COD by myself much better than ever talking to my friend and playing it? I don't. It's probably some guy
Maybe
is,
like
but,
some sociopath. I
but
don't
well,
know.
no, but it's like anybody who's not really antisocial or who has the people to talk to that enjoy
Right.
games is probably going to enjoy the social experience of that.
Right.
Well, and also the whole exclusives thing too. I think that this generation was a little harder, but last generation before this, right? So we look back at, I suppose, it's so weird to count the Wii or the Wii U because they're kind of a weird split generation. Like the Wii came up when the PS2 and original Xbox were still a thing.
Yeah.
But if you look back at, say, the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, and the Wii U, there were exclusives spread out across these. The Wii U sure got destroyed in those terms.
Yeah, that was a terrible console.
Yeah, in those terms it was, sadly. I still enjoyed the gamepad and stuff, but, you know, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 were very good rivals in terms of creating exclusive games that pushed each other to make more games that
Right.
the consumers benefited from. You had things like Halo 3, and then you had PlayStation trying to come out with what the company had dubbed, I don't even think PlayStation said this, it was the company that made this game, the Halo killer, Haze. No one remembers Haze.
I don't even know what that is.
It doesn't matter. But my point is that they were trying to do something to compete with Xbox in that way. Or they would have things like, PlayStation has this fun game. Let's make this. They have God of War. We should make this other game. Or, oh, they're looking good on that front. Maybe we should make Gears of War over here on Xbox. And it was sort of this trying to push back and forth to who had the better game library of that generation.
Yeah.
I think the sucky thing about this generation is that Xbox started out so far behind.
Mm-hmm.
So because of the whole, I believe his name was Don Matrick, if I'm remembering right, the old executive who was in charge before Phil Spencer, who said things like, oh, if you don't have a strong internet connection, there's a console for you already. It's the Xbox 360. This guy, he was a huge douche.
Really?
In my opinion.
I don't even remember that.
Yes, he was. And he was also the one to break, I believe he broke the news too about the Kinect being required for the Xbox One originally and all this stuff. People hated him. But like they had such a bad face going into the console generation.
Sounds like the leader of EA and DICE.
Yeah, I know it does. It's very much like if you don't like it, don't buy it. But the thing was, they had such a bad entry point to the generation with things like the Kinect is required, and then JK, the Kinect's not required. We're pulling it from the system, and you wasted $100 if you bought that. To, oh, the original Xbox One doesn't run very well now. Here's the Xbox One X, all this stuff, because the PS4 did that too with the PlayStation and the Pro, but it didn't become invalidated as much as the original Xbox One did.
Yeah.
And the point I'm getting to is that Xbox made some bad mistakes over the course of the generation that led to not having as good of a console library and almost not trying to compete with PlayStation because they couldn't.
They were just trying to catch up.
Yeah, they hit a point where there was no competing with PlayStation because people developed this brand loyalty to PlayStation over this generation and really, really circle jerked it, which is fine. Enjoy your PlayStation. I do too. And Xbox, the only real ways they could compete were making games cheaper. Xbox Game Pass being infinitely better than PS Now. Like, it's insanely good if you actually enjoy that. And having backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
Those were the things they offered.
Yeah, and a lot of those things came later.
Yes.
So they started out from the bottom.
Yep.
Whereas the PlayStation started out from near the top.
Yes.
Like, everyone just loved the PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
And the Xbox started out from nothing and basically had to gain followers.
You know what's ironic about that is it's the opposite of the way that the PS3 and the Xbox 360 generation started.
Absolutely.
Because they ended up equaling out. I believe the PS3 actually even ended up selling a few more copies, not by much. But at the beginning of that generation, everybody was just hopping on the Xbox bandwagon like hardcore because they had Halo, Gears of War, all this stuff at launch. Kingdom for Keflings. That was a thing.
That's my favorite game ever.
Yeah.
So.
No, but everybody was on board with Xbox at the time because of all these things, and they were not on board with PlayStation, and PlayStation gained ground over time.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder what's going to happen because it's kind of been a back and forth thing like this. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was the same with the original Xbox. People liked it, but it didn't really seem like people cared about the original Xbox as much as the PlayStation 2.
Right.
They cared about Halo 1 and 2 and Fable. And not a lot else like on that console compared to the PS2, which is one of the highest selling consoles of all time. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the PS5 and the Xbox Series X actually do.
Yeah.
I think what it all just comes down to with the console wars is who really cares?
Yeah, I agree completely.
To be honest, like
who cares at this point? It's 2020.
If you like playing the games and if you like PlayStation or you like Xbox, that's fine. But ultimately, it just comes down to playing games.
Yeah.
Like, people buy consoles or they spend a lot of money on a gaming PC or whatnot. They play those to play games.
Right.
They just want a game. They want to play whatever they want to play. And I think what it comes down to is just play your games.
Right. I don't think anyone cares about you justifying your purchase.
Right. Like, let's say you had an Xbox One X and I had a PS4.
Right.
Great. We both like playing our games.
Right, we're both gamers.
Yeah, there you go. We're both gamers.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's what it comes down to for both of us is at the end of the day, who cares? Like, I don't really care what you play your games on if you're enjoying games and you're not a jerk about it. That's really all I care about.
Yeah.
And I think most people are that way. They're pretty done with it. I think it's really just like the Fortnite screechers that are like 10 to 12 years old that still care about this. And maybe the neckbeards who like really need to justify their purchases.
Don't you have a neckbeard?
Off their welfare check. I don't know. It's very silly, and I'm just tired of hearing about it. No one cares. Just shut up.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
So hey, let us know what you think about the console wars in the description down below. What do you think's better, the Ouya or the Google Stadia? Let us know your comments down there and tell us what you prefer to play on.
And also, what do you think is better, Fortnite screechers or neckbeards?
Oh, or what about the best of both worlds? Let us know what you're thinking. We'll see you in the next one. Be sure to check out the description for all of the goodies. We've got the Let's Play channel down there where me and Nate hang out, play some games, talk to you guys. We've got Discord, Reddit, Instagram, Twitter. They are all down there. Have a fantastic day and stay shway.